Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us today in our continuing education series. Today, our featured topic is network asset management. My name is Sonny Hunt, and I'm the Director of Operations here at FiberOptic.com. FiberOptic.com is the leading provider of fiber optic equipment, training, and rental equipment. In 2010, we acquired a network asset management solution called FiberBase. Our interest in FiberBase stemmed from talking with a number of our customers that had purchased OTDRs and other various test and measurement equipment. The major complaint that we were hearing was there was no permanent storage solution once the traces were removed from the OTDR. We also heard the stories of the network plant documentation that were current when the network was built, but over time the drawings were not updated. Coffee was spilled on them, or in some cases there's no printed documentation, but not to worry, all of the information is stored safely in the plant manager's head. AutoCAD and Visio are popular applications for storing network data, but like printed copies, they often become dated and are not searchable, so finding information can be tedious. This really opens the door for FiberBase. FiberBase allows network managers to utilize a database, which means that that data is searchable, and provides the ability to map a network from the A and Z locations. FiberBase is available as a client-server model or a cloud-based solution with our partnership with Amazon. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Terry Power. Terry is one of our senior instructors and an outside plant technician with over 20 years of managing networks. Terry will be discussing the value of asset management solutions and the savings that a company can realize by implementing a database solution. When Terry is finished, we'll open up the audio bridge for question and answer session. Please type your questions in the GoToMeeting chat box. Thank you again for joining us today, and at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Terry.
And good afternoon. This is Terry Power, and I'm one of the senior instructors here at FiberOptic.com. And today, we're going to be talking about network asset management. And we're going to be talking about it from the viewpoint of network optimization, design and engineering, future capacity, signal tracking, documentation, and I've got some more information to go in there as well. And as Sonny had indicated, there's going to be a question and answer session after the presentation. So hang with me for about 20-25 minutes and look at the presentation and save your questions. We'll get to those all at the end of the presentation. All right. So who are the asset management users? Sales and marketing. They're going to be working on new customer acquisition. We've got the network engineering and the inside plant. They're going to be looking at documentation of the inside plant racks, the signals that are being carried on the cables or on the fibers, inventory, connections, that sort of thing. There's going to be access to the records on the route distances. This could be geographical and also used for planning. And customer information per fiber. And again, that goes back to that first part I was suggesting where signals, transports, and data streams can all be tracked per fiber with a good asset management software package. Now, the construction engineering team would be using CAD, construction drawings. They would be using a interface between the database information and AutoCAD. Use that for generating new maps. And then using some kind of Google Earth or other satellite or ground-based imagery that's available with today's technology to save some of the write-out. All of those images can be saved in a database, an asset management package, and used associated to particular objects within the database so that that information is available for everyone on the design team. And lastly, the construction maintenance kind of department, where you're going to have live updates to the CAD design drawings. As changes happen in the field, those changes can be made in the database, And then the database would be tied into the AutoCAD type drawings, and that would live update so that your drawings are always in the most current form. And you don't have piles of 16 revisions or no revisions at all. OTDR route mapping, you can store and associate the OTDR traces to particular spans and have geographical representation of that in a map workspace or something like that. We'll dig a little more deeply into that. And then just general management of those CAD files that we talked about, how those can be live updated by connecting to the Oracle database rather than a static import of the information. All right, so let's look at some of these users in a little more detail. The network engineering users. They're going to be looking at the new customer acquisition, adding the new customers in. They're going to be using AutoCAD maps, perhaps the analysis workspace in, say, Maps 3D AutoCAD. With a connection to the Oracle database, that information can be brought in, and they can use the radius or buffer tool and create large buffers and boundaries around the lines that are being run or are already run, and look at what kind of coverage you have within that region, look at passings per mile, and use that for where you want to focus your marketing or where you want to look at additional construction based on demographic information. Signal and path routing is going to do pretty much like it shows on the slide here, with lines drawn demonstrating what boundaries you might cross. It could be county, city, state. By using regions creatively within your asset management, you can also look at tax boundaries and that sort of thing. It would certainly help with permitting issues where you've got to cross from one jurisdiction into another. Structure information. And now this one's huge when it comes down to simply having information. You can take any structure, whether it's a manhole, a pole, floor, building, racks within that building. You can get a complete inventory. You can have geographical information on the actual location of those structures. You'll be able to tell what kind of splicing closures used in the field, and all the way down to the fibers that go through it. And access lists as to who is actually allowed to be in a structure. Perhaps it's a central office, and you would be able to see very quickly who was on the access list, who could get in, who the phone call should go to in a crisis situation. And again, all of this would be centralized so that you wouldn't have a call list on somebody's desk and they're on vacation and you can't get to it and nobody knows who to call. This would all be accessible by any user that is set up to access that information, and you would be able to quickly and easily get to it. Let's see, conduit availability. This information would include the size of the conduit, fill ratios, the size of the cables going inside. You would be able to identify where you have space for additional growth and where you might need to look into more ducting if you're looking at growth. This would all help with the planning for the future. Priority of cables. Now that kind of information, having been somebody that did emergency restoration for a good bit of my career, having information on the cut order. Which cable am I supposed to plug back together first? Now, with this age we live in, with service level agreements that can be somewhat punitive at times, we want to make sure that the person that is going to cost us $500,000 if we don't get them back on in 4 hours is in fact the first fiber we plug back together, even if it's in the middle of the bundle. That kind of priority of the circuits, priority of the cables, allows us to make better decisions on the fly as to what order to put things back together and where to focus our energies most efficiently and time and financially responsible. Shortest path, that kind of information often goes to latency. It also goes to, if I can find the shortest possible path of my existing route and segment spaces conduit, I can design it in such a way as to use the minimum amount of cable and save money in future planning. And then data entry. This is going to come back to the idea that multiple users can be adding information into the database. We've got a single database where the information is then accessible by multiple users, and we have eliminated a great deal of redundancy and a great deal of phone calling to find out who has the information that we need. Now, the construction engineer user. These are the guys that are out in the field where the rubber meets the road, as it were. They're going to be looking at ride-out, drive-out information, that stuff that we can't see from the satellite-based imagery or the online-based imagery. We're still going to have to get out in the field. We're still going to have to take pictures. We're still going to have to take notes. We're going to draw up sketches of what's out there and what we need to do. All of this information can then be loaded into the database and associated to an object within the database. That object could be a pole or a building, a floor, any kind of database object. We can associate pictures, notes, documents, drawings, etc., so that A, it doesn't get lost, B, we just make the one trip to go get the information, and then lastly, it is available to multiple users. So if you've got a design team that's spread out across the country or the world, you will be able to easily get that information into everyone's hands that needs the information. Redlining, we're going to talk about this on a couple of slides, but the idea that we can draw in temporary lines and start planning drop routes and that sort of thing is something that most of these asset management packages can handle. And we talked about this on the last slide as well, but the interaction of a AutoCAD Maps 3D and similar products will allow us to live update. And I can't stress more how important it is that we are able to update, and you're a refresh key away from having the most current information on the drawings. I have worked in places where I looked at the drawings when the stuff was built 10 years before I started, and it doesn't reflect reality. If we can have a database type of asset management software, any changes can be updated quickly in the database and then reflected on the AutoCAD drawings. And that is a huge, huge advantage that you don't generally have without some kind of asset management package. The construction or maintenance users. Now, these are the guys that are after the fact. They're going to be looking at adding customers with the redlining that we talked about already. This is where we can plan or propose routes for the drops. Again, we keep coming back to data entry, updates, and we're going to be constantly looking at updates. Single source of information for all users, and multiple people can do the updates. In fact, as we talked about OTDR traces and troubleshooting, given the proper access levels, our technicians in the field that are shooting the traces or making the changes in the field, whether it's emergency restoration or just simple maintenance, that information can be updated in the database in almost real time. And people would have the correct information within minutes. OTDR traces can be associated to a span or a segment of cable in the database. When it comes down to troubleshooting and the emergency restoration we've already spoken to, being able to quickly identify the actual geographical location of a break is critical to meeting service level agreements. A lot of times I've been the guy that gets the call in the middle of the night. I go to the head end, get to the patch panel, I shoot the fiber, and I know that I'm short. I go maybe 11 kilometers, and I'm supposed to go 20. And I pull out the trace, and I look, and I've got an idea of where I've got the break, and then I start pulling out the maps and trying to figure out how far 11 kilometers is on the maps from where I am, and all that time is spent and wasted. Whereas if that information were available in a database with some kind of map workspace that's usually built into the solution, I would be able to move my cursor along to the proper point, and a pointer is going to follow me on the map. And within a few minutes, I have a basically X marks the spot. Go to this mark on the map, and somewhere in that general area, depending on the accuracy of the data that you've given the system, you should be able to get very close to the actual break. And not being out there wandering around in the dark with a flashlight trying to find this problem is a huge benefit. So that associated OTDR trace is actually one of my favorites of all of the features in most of these asset management packages. And then you're going to be able to interact with one-call services for digs, and site surveys can all be stored in a single location, again, usually associated to the database object, hole, manhole, building, or whatever that is that's being surveyed. Okay, now record management. Now I keep talking about the idea that all of the records are in one place. Now we're going to talk about the idea here that too much information is as bad or even sometimes worse than not having enough. Not enough information. I mean, we might want the cable ID, the fiber ID, rack information. I'm having a problem with a piece of equipment. I want to be able to send someone into the head end and go to a particular fiber. Well, where is it? If I don't have good information about my rack and fiber ID, what adapter plate, what port, then we're in there kind of shooting in the dark. And I've been on testing jobs where I was shooting in the dark because these records are never up to date. With an asset management package, any change can be updated very quickly, and your information is always accurate. Now, for too much information, it is very easy with multiple departments to have multiple redundant copies of files. Records are kept in management, records are kept in installation, records are kept in sales and customer service, and you get the idea. Who's got the most up-to-date record? When were changes made? Who made the changes? Was that change communicated to all the other departments that have redundant copies of similar information? When you're ready to ask a question, who do you ask? That is a waste of time. And if there's a crisis in the midst of all of this, then we're wasting valuable time that could be spent on problem solving rather than searching for information. Having all of the information in one place with one database, any department that makes a change updates the database, and then any other department that goes looking for information on another day finds the most up-to-date information, and it is a huge savings in record-keeping time, reams of paper, and trees that don't get killed to keep all of these paper documents in multiple locations, and you always know what's the most up-to-date information. All right, operations, finance, and accounting. Any number of times, the management, accountants, finance people are going to want good inventories. They're going to want to know what buildings the system owns or operates, who owns it, who leases it, all of that kind of information. What poles are we attached to? Who owns the pole? Do we own the pole, or are we on a shared pole? Whose jurisdiction is it in? Just having poll record data when it comes into the year time to pay the poll attachment permit. If that information is accurately stored in one place, you've got 4 or 5 clicks of a mouse and you kick out a report and you accurately know how much to pay on your poll attachment. Ducting could be the same thing. Who owns the duct? How much duct do we have? What assets are ours? What are leased? What do we have to pay taxes on? The cable itself. And if you've got good, accurate record keeping with all of your slack, then you also have a very accurate to-the-foot measurement of how much cable is in the field and what your assets are. Racks, equipment, very often those are needed for tax purposes, depreciation. You can see the list could go on and on. Also, those reports are generally easy to kick out of these kind of Oracle databases where everything's searchable, and relational databases make it very easy to add regions. And that comes down to tax jurisdictions. It could come down to state and local government jurisdictions, building codes, attachment rights. All of that information could be by geographical region. We can use the relational database to create a region level, and then everything within that region is associated to it. So when we pull our reports, we can pull our reports by region and look at all of those kind of jurisdictional issues. Fiber usage. Now here, just using this example, we're looking at a 288 count fiber cable, and we've got 72 active fibers. Now, 6 months from now, we may have 144 used. At what point in our growth do we want to trigger a call for more assets? Maybe we get to 200 fibers used, and we're starting to get close to 75% usage, and we think maybe we should be looking at adding some fiber before we run up against not being able to serve new customers and missing out on growth opportunities because we don't have the assets in place in the field. This kind of future planning is very easily done when you know what's out there and you know what's being used. All of this comes back to a single point of record keeping and some kind of management software. Okay, and we've been talking about saving money and sending technicians and installers out into the field. Major providers have put out some statistics that indicate it costs about $150 per truck roll. I've seen figures actually as high as $200 per truck roll. And picture a couple of thousand cell site locations, and then 20% of your truck rolls require revisits because you didn't have the correct information. You didn't go out there with the proper equipment, or you went to the wrong place because the data was incorrect, the maps or the records were not updated. And you can imagine that very quickly you could end up wasting tens of thousands of dollars in a month. and very quickly the cost of an asset management software package is starting to look pretty good. The savings and extra truck rolls will very likely pay for the asset management software. So site surveys being all in one place, engineering and installation information all being in one place will cut down on your truck rolls and save tons of money. So I want to thank everybody for being here. That's all the time I've got and all of the information I'm ready to present. So we're going to open everything up now for questions. And those of you that are viewing this after the fact, we're going to cut this off now for you guys. And I want to thank everyone for being with us. And we'll start taking some questions from the chat room.